I'm a 27-year-old male who loves the beach. I've been going to the same beach every summer since I was a kid. It's a beautiful spot on the coast of North Carolina, with soft sand, rolling dunes, and a picturesque lighthouse that adds to its charm. But one summer night last year, something happened that forever changed the way I look at this beloved place. It was late August, and I was spending a week at a beach house with some friends. We'd spent the day surfing, swimming, and soaking up the sun. As night fell, we decided to have a bonfire on the beach. We gathered wood, set up some chairs, and started a small fire. The night was clear, and the stars were bright. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing, and we were all in high spirits. Around 11 p.m., we decided to take a walk along the beach. There were 6 of us: me, my girlfriend Sarah, my best friend Mike, his girlfriend Jess, and our friends Tom and Lisa. We left the fire burning and set off down the shore, talking and laughing as we walked. After about 20 minutes, we reached a more secluded part of the beach, where the dunes were taller and the beach grass was thicker. As we walked, we noticed something unusual. There were no other people around, which wasn't too surprising given the late hour, but there was a strange feeling in the air. The laughter and chatter slowly died down, and we all became more aware of the darkness around us. The moon was half full, casting long shadows on the sand. Suddenly, Mike stopped and pointed to something in the distance. "Do you see that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We all squinted in the direction he was pointing and saw a faint flickering light coming from behind one of the dunes. It looked like a lantern or a small fire. Curious, we decided to check it out. As we got closer, the light grew brighter, and we could hear faint voices. We crept up the dune and peered over the top. What we saw made our blood run cold. There, in a small clearing between the dunes, was a group of people dressed in old-fashioned clothing. They were standing in a circle around a bonfire, chanting in a language none of us recognized. The firelight cast eerie shadows on their faces, making them look almost ghostly. We watched in stunned silence as one of them, a tall man with a long beard, stepped forward and raised his hands. The chanting grew louder and more intense. Sarah grabbed my arm and whispered, "We should go. This doesn't feel right." I nodded, and we started to back away slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. Just as we turned to leave, a loud crack echoed through the air. We spun around to see the tall man pointing directly at us. The chanting stopped, and the group turned to look in our direction. Panic set in, and we bolted, running as fast as we could back down the beach. We didn't stop until we reached our bonfire, our hearts pounding in our chests. We quickly put out the fire, grabbed our things, and ran back to the beach house. Once inside, we locked the doors and tried to catch our breath. We were all shaken and terrified. What had we just witnessed? The rest of the night was spent in a tense silence, with everyone on edge. We didn't talk much about what had happened, but the fear was palpable. The next morning, curiosity got the best of us, and we decided to go back to the spot where we had seen the group. We walked down the beach in the bright daylight, the sun erasing some of the fear we felt the night before. When we reached the dunes, we climbed over to the clearing. What we found was both puzzling and unsettling. There were a few burned logs where the bonfire had been, but no trace of anything else. No footprints, no remnants of the old-fashioned clothing, no sign that anyone had been there at all. It was as if the whole scene had been a mirage. We stood there in silence, trying to make sense of it. Mike broke the silence. I mean, we all saw that, right? Everyone solemnly nodded their heads in agreement. We left the beach with more questions than answers. I still go to the beach, but I've never returned to that secluded part again. I'm a 23-year-old male now, but this story took place when I was only 8. My family took summer vacations to the beach every year, and we usually just rented a small beach house. But this year we decided to change it up and spend a week at a resort hotel on the coast. The hotel was fantastic, with a big pool, direct access to the beach, and an arcade room that I loved. My younger brother, Mark, was 6 at the time, and my older sister, Jenny, was 14. Our parents had promised us a week of fun and relaxation, and for the most part, that's exactly what we got. One afternoon, after a morning spent swimming in the ocean and building sandcastles, we decided to head back to the hotel. My dad took Jenny to the pool for some more swimming, while my mom, Mark, and I went to the arcade room. I was thrilled, as the arcade was my favorite place in the hotel. Mark and I played games for a while, racing each other in the driving games and trying our luck at the claw machine. After a bit, Mark tripped and hurt his knee. He started crying, and my mom decided to take him back to the room to clean him up and get him some ice. She told me to stay in the arcade and that she'd be back soon. I felt like a big kid, being trusted to stay there alone. So I nodded and continued playing. I was having a great time, but before long, I ran out of tokens. I was just about to head back to our room when a man approached me. He looked to be in his late 40s, with a friendly smile and a Hawaiian shirt that seemed a bit too cheerful. He had a small cup of tokens in his hand. "Hey there, having fun?" he asked, his tone casual. "Yeah, but I'm out of tokens," I replied, a bit disappointed. He glanced around the empty arcade room and leaned in a little closer. "Well, I've got a few extra tokens. How about I give them to you and we can play some games together?" At first I was excited. Free tokens meant more time in the arcade, and the idea of playing games with someone new seemed fun. I was a naive kid who didn't see any danger in accepting his offer. I hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Okay, that sounds great," I said with a smile. The man handed me a few tokens, and we started playing one of the racing games. He seemed nice enough, asking me about my favorite games and telling me how good I was at driving. After a couple of games, I ran out of tokens again. "You're really good at this," he said. "Tell you what, I know a machine that gives out extra tokens if you know the right trick. Want me to show you?" I was thrilled at the idea of getting more tokens without spending any money. "Yeah, that would be awesome." He led me towards the back of the arcade, away from the entrance and deeper into the room. Just as we reached a corner with a change machine, he leaned in closer. "Here, let me show you how it works," he said, taking out a key. That's when things started to feel off. I remembered my mom always telling me to be careful around strangers, but I had already followed him this far. As he fumbled with the machine, I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Suddenly, he looked around nervously, then back at me. "You know, I could get us even more tokens from the office. Why don't you come with me? It'll just take a minute." My excitement turned to unease. "I don't think I should. My mom said she'd be back soon," I replied, stepping back. His friendly demeanor changed in an instant. He grabbed my arm tightly. "It'll just be a minute," he insisted, pulling me towards the back exit. Fear gripped me, and I tried to pull away. "Let me go," I shouted, hoping someone would hear me. Just then, the door to the arcade swung open, and my dad walked in with Jenny. They must have finished at the pool and decided to check on me. The man quickly let go of my arm and backed away, trying to look nonchalant. "Tom, is everything okay?" my dad asked, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. I ran to him, tears welling up in my eyes. "That man tried to take me," I blurted out, pointing at the stranger. The man raised his hands defensively. "Oh, there must be some misunderstanding. I was just trying to help him get more tokens," he said. But my dad wasn't buying it. "Stay away from my son," my dad growled, stepping between us. The man muttered something under his breath and quickly left the arcade. My dad reported the incident to the hotel management, and they called the police. The man was found and questioned, but he claimed it was all a misunderstanding. They couldn't charge him with anything substantial, but he was banned from the hotel. I'm a 35-year-old woman who recently went through a tough divorce. To clear my head and find some peace, I decided to rent a beach house in Florida for a week. I wanted to escape the memories and the stress, and a quiet, secluded beach seemed like the perfect place to start fresh. Little did I know, this trip would turn into a nightmare. I arrived at the beach house on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The house was beautiful, with large windows overlooking the ocean, a cozy porch, and direct access to a private stretch of beach. The first couple of days were wonderful. I spent my time sunbathing, reading, and walking along the shore. It was exactly the escape I needed. On Tuesday evening, I decided to treat myself to a nice dinner at a local seafood restaurant. The sun had set by the time I returned to the beach house. The air was warm, and the sound of the waves was soothing. I locked the doors, changed into my pajamas, and settled in for a relaxing night. I curled up on the couch with a book, feeling more at peace than I had in months. Around 11 p.m., I started to feel drowsy, so I decided to head to bed. I made sure all the doors and windows were locked, then climbed into bed. The rhythmic sound of the ocean quickly lulled me to sleep. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I was jolted awake by a noise. At first, I thought it was just the sound of the waves or the wind, but then I heard it again. A faint scraping sound like something being dragged across the floor. My heart began to race as I lay there, straining to hear. The sound was coming from downstairs. I quietly slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the bedroom door. I listened for a moment, my pulse pounding in my ears. The scraping sound continued, followed by a low thud. Someone was in the house. I grabbed my phone and crept back to the bed, trying to keep calm. I dialed 911, whispering my location to the operator. She assured me that officers were on their way and told me to stay on the line. I could hear the intruder moving around downstairs, and my mind raced with fear. Suddenly, the noises stopped. The silence was deafening. I held my breath, listening intently. Then I heard slow, deliberate footsteps coming up the stairs. Panic surged through me. I looked around the room for something to defend myself with, but there was nothing useful. The footsteps grew closer, and I could see a shadow moving in the hallway. "Stay calm, ma'am. The police are almost there," the operator whispered in my ear, but I could hardly hear her over the sound of my own breathing. The doorknob slowly turned, and the door creaked open. A tall man stepped into the room, his face obscured by the darkness. He had a flashlight in one hand and a crowbar in the other. I could see his eyes scanning the room, searching for me. "Get out!" I screamed, trying to sound braver than I felt. The man froze for a moment, then started towards me. My mind went blank with terror. Just as he reached the bed, we both heard the sound of sirens approaching. The man turned and bolted out of the room. I could hear him thundering down the stairs and the sound of the back door slamming open. I stayed on the line with the operator until the police burst into the house a few moments later. The officers found me huddled on the bed, shaking with fear. They searched the house and the surrounding area, but found no sign of the intruder. He had vanished into the night. They assured me they would keep a patrol car nearby for the rest of my stay. but I knew I couldn't stay there another night. I packed my things and left the beach house the next morning, cutting my trip short. I couldn't shake the feeling of violation and fear that had settled over me. What was supposed to be a peaceful retreat had turned into a terrifying ordeal. The thing that haunts me the most is that the intruder came in with the clear intent to find me. He didn't bother with any of my expensive jewelry, my laptop that was sitting on the dining room table, or any of the valuable items in the Airbnb. He must have been watching me over the past few days, trying to find the right time to break in. I've never felt so much like a wild animal being hunted for sport. Thanks so much for listening to Nightmare Narratives. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be reminded when we post a new video every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. If you have a story you'd like to hear read on the channel, email it to us at officialnightmarenarratives@gmail.com, and you might just hear your story featured in a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.